going on, Cape League fans? Welcome to another episode of the Cape League podcast. On today's episode, we have something a little different coming your way. We sat down with a member of the 2004 and 2005 Falmouth Commodore teams, first baseman Mark Hamilton. Mark had a great career, made it all the way to the bigs with the St. Louis Cardinals, and won the 2011 World Series championship with the team. His life after baseball is even more impressive, and he has been all over the news in recent weeks about the work he's doing. So let's get into the interview. Here he is, Mark Hamilton. All right, our next guest is a two-time former first baseman for the Falmouth Commodores in the 2004 and 2005 seasons, and a World Series champion as a member of the 2011 St. Louis Cardinals, Mark Hamilton. Mark, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you? Good to have. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I know you're probably really busy, gearing up for, what you have coming ahead of you, and we're definitely going to be touching on that. Where I'd really like to start here is, you played college ball at Tulane. Mm-hmm. And, was the Cape League something that you had your eye on for a while as a league that you wanted to join? And, what was it like when you got asked to officially, come be a member of the Cape League?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. It was something that I aspired to. Actually, when I graduated high school, I was looking for something a little more competitive because I knew I was going to Tulane University the next year to play D1 ball. And I actually asked Tulane if they would allow me to go to the Cape, and they kind of laughed at the request, saying that, it was only for guys that were in college, but I was a little ambitious there. And they ultimately sent me to the Clark Griffith League, which was my first experience in a wood bat league. And it definitely made me excited for the Cape when I found out I was going the next year.
That's great. So when was the first time you even heard about the Cape League? Because if you already knew about it in high school, I mean, you must have heard about it, through a movie, or was people talking about it already to you?
Sure. I mean, as a ball player, you definitely hear about it. It's one of those things you hear on broadcasts and other things, talking about guys that played in the Cape League, or when you're talking about the Major League Draft, guys will talk about when they got scouted there. But, also I think the movie Summer Catch is kind of something everybody got their eye on at one point. And then I definitely first learned about the Falmouth Commodores on that movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like, for me, even when I was growing up, I think I was 10 at the time, and I had just started going to games, and then that movie came out. So especially with people around my age, I think that definitely resonates with a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the irony, the Commodores were the bad guys in that movie. I mean,
exactly.
Maybe it's the black jerseys. I don't know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and Freddie Prinze, had to go out and make a name for himself. So yeah, that was a funny movie. But your career with the Cape League is a little bit different than most. I wouldn't say it's too unique, but you were one of the few people that played 2 seasons, in the Cape League. So, did your approach change at all between your first season and then your second season coming in?
I mean, in a way it did. The first year there was definitely, I guess, less on the line in a way. The second year you're trying to get ready for the draft year. You really hope to impress scouts that are around and stuff like that. That first year was more of, work on my skills, work on hitting with the wood bat, kind of get my feet wet to that level of competition. So, I mean, a little bit, I guess there was a little bit of an approach difference the first year, the second year, but at the same time, I go out to play the game hard every night, and that never changed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, one of the things that, I always talk about with the Cape League is that you don't have a lot of time to prepare. You only get a couple of days before the season starts. So,
sure.
Especially your second season, did you kind of take it upon yourself to be a little bit more of a leader on the team and kind of help the guys out any way you could?
I mean, yeah, when you're coming back and you have some familiarity there's definitely a little bit of the leadership role that you naturally inherit, and just kind of, maybe try to help calm the nerves of, anybody if they needed that. But, the reality is the talent level is so high in the Cape League. I think everybody's used to being a leader. Anyone that's asked to be on one of these teams is, been a leader in their sport, whether it was high school or college or both. So I think that's one of the best things about the league in general, is that everybody's really at the top of their game and kind of brings a good presence to the clubhouse.
Mm-hmm. Well, you brought something up there, the high talent level. Your former GM back when you were on the team, Chuck Sturdivant, one of the things that he was telling us, when we let him know that you were coming on the show, was from a talent standpoint, that 2004 roster might be one of the best Falmouth teams of all time. And I was looking back on the roster. I think you guys had 8 or 9 guys who ended up in the MLB. Some names that came to mind for me were Jacoby Ellsbury, Matt Antonelli, Cliff Pennington. Can you tell back then when that group got together, these guys could be really special?
Absolutely. I mean, was so unbelievably talented through and through. And, we had just star after star after star. Our lineup was unbelievable. Our pitching was unbelievable. It really was, I think, clear to me and clear to a lot of people around the league and stuff like that, that there was something different about that team. All the Cape teams are good inherently, but that team was definitely something special.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like too, just between like how much talent there was that year, and then even like the following year, your team made it to the championship. So it sounds like you were able to have a bunch of fun in those 2 seasons and got to meet a bunch of great people in the league. So do you still stay in touch with a lot of these guys, and like have you been back to the Cape at all since?
So I haven't been back, but I do keep in touch with some guys, mostly on social media, which is kind of one of the wonderful things about Facebook and stuff like that is you can maintain contact with, ex teammates and people that you've met that kind of otherwise you wouldn't run into. So I really enjoyed some of those relationships, and I've also definitely kept in contact with the son of my host family, especially as he's gotten older, and he's reached out to me a few times when he graduated high school and stuff like that, and it's been really fun to watch him, mature from the 7 or 8 year old boy that I played wiffle ball with to now he's turning into a man. So it's really it's been an amazing journey there.
Well, that's a perfect transition actually, because one of the most crucial elements I think that really helps make the Cape League so successful is having those local families and like take players in. So can you kind of give us a behind the scenes look of like what that process was like in terms of like, who you were being matched up with, like how you met up with them, and then overall just how the summer went living with them?
I mean, it's an interesting concept. It's somebody that you don't know, and you kind of get thrust into this relationship with them. But I mean, I was incredibly fortunate, and honestly, talking to my teammates and knowing their experiences while I was there, it seems to be that everyone really, really enjoys it and gets, incredible host families. The people that volunteer to do it, are doing it for the right reasons. A lot of them, have kids that love baseball, and they're doing it because they want to be a part of something and help out. I know my, host family, which was the Scotts, Martha and Lila and Nick Scott. I loved them. They were fantastic. They were like a second family to me, and they really, treated me just, like one of them. And it was a wonderful experience.
So like how do you get assigned? Is it kind of just like random how you get assigned to people, and then do you kind of like meet them at a central location, or do you just kind of like show up at their house?
So, I mean, it is pretty much a random assignment, is my understanding. That might not be correct. You'd have to ask someone, that's more involved in like the technical aspects of the league.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, really, they gave me their address, and I pulled into the driveway one day after, driving up from New Orleans, which was a heck of a long drive. And it really is kind of a unique experience to do something like that, where you literally, hi, how are you? I'm going to be living with you for the next few months.
Yeah, just show up with a bunch of bags. Hey, I'm
Absolutely,
here.
right. Here's my luggage. Can you show me my room? I mean, but it was absolutely wonderful, and I really, really enjoyed my host family a whole lot. And they were, definitely some, people that have been very special to me.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you had a tremendous experience with them. I mean, like, what else did you do for fun with them? Like, did they take you to any cool places, or was there anything that really sticks out to you as like activities you would love to do over the summer with them?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely went to the beach with them sometimes. When we had off days, we had time to go. And my host mom was, really good cook and would make, meals when we came home, and we just spend a lot of time talking baseball. And, I played video games, with my host brother. And we had a big, nice big yard. So we'd go out and play catch and, play wiffle ball, play tennis ball, baseball. It was just great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now I know you also, the 2 seasons you spent with Falmouth, you got to play for, one of the more seasoned coaches, Coach Trundy. I know you speak very highly of him. So, what is it about Coach Trundy that like he was able to get the most out of you? And did he teach you anything that really helped you make it to the big leagues?
I mean, he's an absolute gem. Just a wonderful person, and a wonderful manager too. And he really did. I think he really did teach me a whole lot. He taught me a whole lot about how to be tenacious and how to attack challenges in the game, because it's inevitable that you face them. And when times were tough, how to keep your attitude in the right place. And I've really enjoyed that relationship, and we still stay in touch, like I said, on social media from time to time. And I feel very fortunate to have been able to play for him.
Yeah, he no, he says the same things about you, and it's funny because a lot of the things that you mentioned seemed like it was really his coaching mentality that really kind of set him apart from other coaches that you've had in the past. But one of the things that he mentioned to me was, first of all, is that you never got in your own way, and you could tell that you really just loved playing the game. But one funny thing that he said that I thought was pretty funny was that he couldn't tell if when somebody got on first base if they were getting aggravated with you, if they were enjoying it, because he said that you love to chat people's ears off. So is that a tactic on your side? Is it more just I'm just loving playing this game?
It's probably a little bit of both. Definitely occasionally there have been times when someone's a prolific base stealer. Um, you can kind of maybe keep them a little bit distracted, but more than anything, I'm just a very social person. I always have been. And I like getting to know these guys, and in that type of league, a lot of these players are going to move on. You're going to see them in professional ranks, and you're going to have relationships with them moving forward. So it definitely was something that, I really enjoyed, spending time and getting to talk to different guys on different teams that you may not otherwise.
For sure. So another thing, you touched on it earlier, and I know you had a little bit of an advantage coming to the Cape League since you played in a one and bat league beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
but you're the first, position player that I've interviewed. So I'd really like to get your perspective on, how tough of a change that was going from using metal bat to a wooden bat. Did you have to change your mechanics at all? Or was it more of just like a change in feel?
I mean, honestly, it's more of a change in feel. You just have a lot less room for air is the thing. The bat's a little bit heavier, but I was kind of a big guy, and I had used them before some. So, there definitely is an adjustment. I think the adjustment is that your skill level has to get better so that you're making more centered contact more consistently. You can just get away with more things with the metal bat. You can, catch it off the end. You can catch it off the handle. The ball still goes. It has a little bit of that trampoline effect, and the bats don't
Mm-hmm.
break. More than anything, it helped me get stronger, helped me get bigger, which prepared me more for moving forward into pro ball. And it just gave me some experience utilizing it, especially against guys throwing as hard as we saw every night in the Cape.
Yeah. Well, that actually is a great transition into your pro ball stuff. So, you got drafted by the Cardinals, came up through that organization, and then you actually, I think it was like right at the beginning of the 2010 season, you got to make your debut. So,
Mm-hmm.
walk us through that experience and just ultimately coming through the big league, coming through the minor leagues, and ultimately making that first, walking out to first base for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing journey, an amazing experience, and kind of what I realized is that the minor leagues, if anything, probably it wasn't until I got to Double A that I really felt as challenged as I did every night in the Cape. The pitching's
Interesting.
just so quality in the Cape League, and you have to learn how to beat the levels, and there's little nuances there and everything. I felt like my first short season ball was very similar to my college talent level that I saw. Just you're using a wood bat. When I went to low A, there were, a lot more young prospects throwing hard. The strike zones were a little more variable, so there's definitely some adjustments there. But when I got to double A is when I really felt like, consistently being challenged by the pitching every night. And I really had to, become better with my approach. Skill, talent, all those things, they take you so far, but sooner or later you have to really kind of finesse your game into a different level and have a good approach and be able to take at bats in a quality way, not just go up there and, hacking it, whatever looks like it's the right pitch to hit. And then, moving through the rest of the levels, AAA, I really enjoyed. We had some unbelievable teams with my Memphis team and with the Paw Sox that I subsequently played for. And we made the playoffs a bunch of times, got to play under some, big pressure and some big games and PCL once. And then ultimately, like you said, making my debut in 2010, it's just incredible to walk out onto fields that you've, either seen on TV or maybe watched a game at when you were a kid. And it's something else.
Yeah, I mean, and then going one step further, the next year, you're a part of an unbelievable St. Louis Cardinals team, and you end up winning the World Series. So, I mean, that obviously that's something that we all dream about as players, like making it onto that stage. So, what was it like being around a special group of guys like that, and then ultimately getting the job done?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. We had a great team, and we actually had some of our struggles early on, but it was clear that we had a lot of talent, a lot of ability. We had signed Berkman that year. We had signed Beltran, so we kind of had revamped our lineup a little bit from the 2010 season, and it was clear to us that we had the ability to get it done. But we didn't win enough games early on. Eventually, the team really found its groove later in the year and put it all together, and then ultimately took the champion.
One thing I'd like to do now is kind of transition away from baseball because, you played in the bigs, you ended up retiring at the age of 30. Why did you think that was the right time to do that? And, tell us a little bit about where you went from there.
Sure. So, I had actually I come from a interesting background. My father is a prolific researcher in medical oncology, and he's the director of pathology and laboratory medicine at City of Hope Hospital in LA. And I grew up around, research, basic science medicine, and it was something that I loved. And, you don't hear that every day from athletes and ball players that they're, obsessed with organic chemistry and biochemistry and these things. But for me, it was really something I enjoyed, and I loved, hearing about what my dad did. And I really wanted to become a doctor when I got done playing. My dad, thank goodness, kind of fostered the belief that I could do both. He told me, that it had been done before. There were other, major league players, professional players that had become doctors. Bobby Brown comes to mind, probably is the name I heard the most through my childhood. And, he said baseball is a young man's game. So while you're young, go play, see how far you can take it, and go from there. But make sure your studies are in order. And that's ultimately what I did. I chose Tulane University on a large scale because of the education I knew I'd be able to receive while I was there. And I majored in molecular biology my first 3 years prior to getting drafted. And when I did get drafted, my wife and I sat down and we talked about, what do careers look like? Obviously, the majority of people don't make it to the major leagues, and that's one career path: is you go through the minor leagues for X amount of years, and then you're done. And then there's the latter half, the guys that do make it to the major leagues. And there's really two or three types of players. There's the guys that become superstars or become everyday players and play 6+ years. There's the journeymen who, bounce around from team to team, but still manage to get 3 to 6 years of service time. And then there's the guys that kind of ride the elevator between AAA and the big leagues for a few years, never really get solidified in a starting role. And they end up minor league free agents. And I kind of looked at that and said, obviously if I'm out of the game early, if I don't make it to the big leagues, I'll go right back. I'll finish school. I'll go to medical school. If I'm finding myself being one of those people that's riding the elevator, and I'm playing minor league free agent ball, at the age of 30, I want to go back and finish my degree and go to med school. And that was kind of the number I had set, because I know how the American Medical Association works, and it's 4 years of medical school. I had a year left on my degree. That's 5. And then residency is 5 to 6. So there's 11. And I wanted to make sure that if I was given the opportunity to do it, I could be practicing medicine for, a nice long career after I was done residency.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. So, but I know when you did decide to walk away, I know you were still receiving some offers to keep playing.
Sure.
So, was it kind of hard for you in that moment to be like, oh, I think I can still go for a couple more years, or was it a little bit easier for you just to make that decision and move on?
It's always a hard decision to give up on a dream in a way. And I, at the same time, I think I was very fortunate that I was in a position where I didn't necessarily feel like I was giving up on a dream as much as I was pursuing another one. Which made it a little bit easier. But at the same time, it's really hard whenever you're going to hang it up, and that you played your last game in a professional jersey, and you played that last meaningful at bat. So a little bit of both is the truth. But at the same time, the way my season ended in 2014, I actually came out and there was about 2 weeks before classes started. So it was really serendipitous that I would be able to immediately return to the classroom and pursue a medical degree. If things had changed or gone another way, I may not have been able to do it. So despite having some interest of playing winter ball and some teams that were interested in bringing me into camp the next year, according to my agent, it was the right move at the time. And I'll tell you, definitely now I have no regrets, and I'm really glad that I did it when I did it.
Right. So take us on that path then, right? So, you retired at 30. Mm-hmm. You went back to Tulane, finished up there to get your neuroscience degree. Mm-hmm. So where did that take you after that? So you had to get your medical degree. So where did you go? Right. And where did you focus?
Yeah. So I went back to Tulane University, like you said, for 2 years. I finished a degree in neuroscience, finished all my courses that I needed to have, like requisite courses, took the board exam, the entrance exam to get into med school. Then I applied kind of broadly. My wife is from New York. We had I joked I dragged her all over the country with baseball, so now it's her turn. And we pursued different options, obviously, but once I got my interview and acceptance letter from the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell, which is up here in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
it really came to me that it was the right place. They had a very unique curriculum that's case-based and learner-centric instead of being didactic or lecture hall learning. It was a lot of, learn the material on your own and then come back and discuss it with the groups, discuss it with the other physicians. And I really kind of sat with me. I had done some learning and memory classes while I was at Tulane finishing my neuroscience major, and it really seemed like the way that they educated medicine would give me a high degree of retention and allow me to really
Mm-hmm.
benefit and utilize the understanding that I gained. So I, ultimately within a week of getting my acceptance letter, I actually ended up canceling my other interviews to other institutions and said, this is where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Spent the next 4 years pursuing that and finished about 2 Fridays ago to earn my MD. Um, Pretty incredible journey, honestly. And really couldn't take it any other way.
Right, and obviously, I think you guys graduated early with everything going on. So, there's been a lot of articles about you coming out recently. I've read one on ESPN. I think I read one on like USA Today as well. But why don't you just tell everybody, where you're kind of going from here? I know you just got a residency at a
Mm-hmm.
hospital. So, where you're going to be going and where you're going to be working
Sure. So, we go through what's called a match system. You take all your boards, stuff like that, and depending on how you do in your boards, you can apply to, various specialties in medicine and have a high likelihood of matching, as they call it. It's kind of like a draft in the way. You go and interview all over the country. Ultimately, they make a list based on their preference of all the people that they interviewed, and you do the same. So you put a preference of, the places I interviewed. I think I interviewed at 20 plus places, and places rather, and I have to rank them 1 to 15. And I matched in a field called interventional radiology, which is something
on?
most people are not familiar with, but it's really a incredible field. It does minimally invasive image guided surgery. So we run wires through the arterial or venous system from the outside of the body, and we utilize real-time X-ray and CT imaging to see where we are, and we ultimately navigate to a target inside the body that's often either inaccessible or very hard to access by a traditional surgeon, and we do various interventions that way. And I'm incredibly fortunate to do that. The way interventional radiology residency works, we have a 1+5 system. So my first year being a practicing physician, I don't actually start in radiology. I begin as an internal medicine resident. And that residency will be at Long Island Jewish and North Shore University hospitals here in New York. Those are part of Northwell Health. Northwell's been really spearheading the efforts in testing and COVID relief up here. They've done a tremendous job. So I'll be working, within the hospital system, managing patients that are admitted to the hospital. And you kind of alluded to it. A lot of these patients right now are admitted, for COVID. I think we've had, I read an article the other day, Northwell finally discharged its 1,000th COVID patient, from the hospital I'll be working at, which is
Incredible.
incredible. But by no stretch of the imagination, when I start here in a few weeks, will we be out of the woods? So I'll definitely be, directly managing these patients, and it's a unique challenge.
Yeah, so that's incredibly brave of you, and obviously, just so unselfish of you to really want to, sink your teeth into this. So, what goes through your mind knowing that when you start your residency in June, that you're going to be face to face with this
Right. I mean,
pandemic?
there's definitely some anxiety and apprehension. I think that's natural. I think anyone that's been involved in this is feeling that way because it is scary. It's something we don't quite know as much about as we'd like to. I think generally in medicine, while treatments are constantly evolving, we have a fairly good grasp on how to manage a lot of conditions, especially infectious disease at this point in history. And this is definitely one we don't really have the answers to right now. So, until we can get a vaccine, which hopefully comes out in the near future, we are going to be dealing with this problem, and it's something that we have to manage. And you manage the anxiety around it, and by taking the best care of yourself and the best care of your coworkers as you can.
Yeah, and I just think it speaks so highly of your character, and Coach Trundy, Chuck Sturtevant, they all said the same thing about your character. It's first class, and I think everything that you're doing post your baseball career really highlights that. So I know everyone at the league definitely appreciates how good of an ambassador you are, and I think everyone across the country, whoever listens to this, can really look at you as not only a success story from a baseball perspective, but life after baseball. I mean, you're really hitting a home run, Mark, and I know I can speak for everyone in the country and say thank you very much for the efforts that you're going to be
Absolutely. I
putting
mean,
into
it's
this.
something that I've always wanted to do, and I feel very honored to become a physician.
Well, I know, thank you very much for sharing your story and, coming on for a few minutes and, kind of giving us a behind the scenes look on all of this. But, best of luck when you start your, residency in June. And I'm sure all those patients are going to be so thrilled to be working with you. So thank you so much for the time again, Mark. And, best of luck when you
Absolutely.
get
Stay
out there in
safe,
June.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you again to Mark for coming on the show and sharing his story. I think we can all respect the path that Mark has taken, and I'm confident that he's going to make a huge difference in so many people's lives. But that does wrap up this episode of the Cape League Podcast. Make sure you check us out on Twitter at Cape League Pod and on Instagram, Cape League Podcast. Next week, we have a fun interview coming your way with Arizona Diamondbacks pitcher Alex Young. We'll see you then.